Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much for joining us for the fourth and final episode of Pangolin, the Conservation Podcast, which is going to be recorded here at Global Birdfair. It's been absolutely fantastic to be here. If you haven't caught any of the episodes that we've recorded already, my name is Jack, and I'm the host of Pangolin, the Conservation Podcast, which is a show which celebrates underappreciated, misunderstood stories in the conservation and nature. It's been a long weekend. Nature space. And today I am joined, very excitingly, by Sean McCormack, who is a conservationist vet, presenter, and the project lead on the Ealing Beaver Project, to discuss a species and a project that is so exciting to me, something I think we've wanted to talk about on the podcast for a long time. So thank you so much for joining me today, Sean.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, great to come and chat. And beavers are my special topic these days. So yeah,
yes,
plenty to talk about.
This is the thing. Plenty to talk about, 20 minutes to do it in. And I think we can get as much beaver into people's minds as possible. We'll do it. It's going to be fantastic. And before we do that though, I think the best way to kind of start is always I like to ask my guests, I do the research of what's on your website and LinkedIn and whatever's out there. But I always think you know yourself better than I know you. So could you introduce yourself and tell everyone who's listening a little bit about, who you are and what you do?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a lifelong naturalist like many people here, I think. And I went into a career in veterinary medicine. And I studied zoo and wildlife medicine to kind of marry my love of nature and wildlife with vet work. So I worked in domestic and exotic pet practices, and I worked in zoo practices as well. And after about 6 years in practice, I came out and started an industry consultancy role and had time on my hands, looked for local conservation groups in my area, found there weren't any, so I set one up myself called Ealing Wildlife Group. And then we've done a lot of conservation projects through traditional species-focused projects like barn owls, peregrine falcons, great crested newts, hedgehogs, swifts. And then more recently we've got into more rewilding topics and actually reintroduction of species. So we started with Britain's smallest native rodent, the harvest mouse. And the biggest project to date that we were partners on is the Ealing Beaver Project. We've brought beavers back to urban London for the very first time.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. I think that's the thing that I found particularly interesting when I was doing the reading is I think a lot of people picture a beaver and they picture it kind of not in an urban setting. It's not the immediate thought that comes to mind when people picture that kind of animal. And so it's really, really interesting. And I wondered that's kind of where you started and kind of how you kind of maybe got to this point in a little bit of detail, but what was it about particularly the beaver that you thought this is something that I want to work with in this space? And now what was the need for that to kind of happen?
Yeah, there was a few times that beavers kind of came into my career and out of my career and were on my agenda. Early on in my undergrad degree in animal science, I did a project on the feasibility of bringing beavers back in England, and that was in the early noughties. And it was around the same time, probably the same year, that Kent Wildlife Trust reintroduced beavers for the first time at Ham Fen in Kent. So that was on my radar that, it's going to happen now. It's starting to happen that we're bringing this extinct lost species back. And then when I qualified as a vet, my first job was down in Kent, believe it or not, quite near to Ham Fen. And I worked with the Wildwood Trust, who was restoring beavers and water voles and lots of our native species. So always had an interest in these kind of reintroduction, reinstatement projects. And then it came back to water voles in Ealing. We were talking about reintroducing water voles. And I teamed up with my project partner, Elliot Newton from Citizen Zoo, who had successfully reintroduced water voles in Kingston. And I said to him, I'd like to do the same in Ealing and emulate your project, but I think we should be talking about bringing beavers back first, because beavers are a keystone species to open up wetland habitats and have healthy, thriving wetland ecosystems again. They are the ecosystem engineer that does that. So I said, is it bonkers to think about jumping the rodent ladder from water voles up to beavers first, and then maybe look at water vole reintroduction once the beavers have changed that wetland or that landscape? And Elliot thought, no, that's not such a bonkers idea. Let's talk about it. And we talked to the Beaver Trust, and the London Beaver Working Group was set up. And also, rewind again, one of my, I did an international study semester in Vancouver in Canada, and I saw there in 2003 that beavers were downtown in Stanley Park in Vancouver. So that was the early seed that beavers are not the wilderness species that we think they are. And whenever I read in books about beavers, they were in the wilds of Alaska or Russia, or, the fur trade in these amazing kind of wilderness places. But actually, we've just forgot how closely we've lived alongside beavers for tens of thousands of years. And we wanted to prove that we can do it again, and that people don't need to be afraid of the unknown bringing this species back. And if there are problems that they can cause in urban areas, we want to demonstrate how we can manage those problems very easily and in a very cost-effective way. And that's what we're doing at the Ealing Beaver Project.
Mm-hmm. That's really fantastic. I think it opens up a couple different avenues, because I think there's the aspects where we focus on maybe the challenges that maybe you face, but there's also the benefits there, and the need to have them there in the first place, I suppose. And kind of what was I suppose if we open with the challenges, I suppose, and how you convince people, I think because I imagine even in not urban areas where people are maybe more familiar with some wildlife, there are challenges around reintroducing species. There are challenges around reintroducing beavers. What were the kind of challenges you faced coming into kind of an urban setting, I suppose, and kind of thinking about this in that kind of space?
Yeah, it was different to a lot of the rural beaver projects, or projects where you're putting beavers back in the landscape near other stakeholders like farmers or landowners who are, wary of this new species coming back. We were at somewhat of an advantage because we had a history or a pedigree in Ealing of doing lots of successful wildlife projects, and urban people are, clamoring for nature and green space and want those kind of things to happen. So we didn't have the really vocal neighbourhood opposition, to us. Most people were very, very pro the project. We consulted them early, which was really important. We brought them into the conversation about the project, and a lot of it was to do with education. So we had a small number of people worried that the beavers are going to eat all the trees in Ealing. And we had to explain that's not how it happens. They, harvest trees in a regenerative, sustainable way. The trees grow back. They create more habitat diversity by doing that. We had a very small vocal minority saying they're going to eat all the fish. And we had to explain that C.S. Lewis in Narnia depicted beavers frying fish on a frying pan, but they're herbivores. They eat just trees and plants. The main concern people had about the project was actually for the beavers' welfare. Do the beavers belong in an urban area like in north of Ealing? Would they be safe from humans and dogs in particular? And we had to just reassure people that everything beavers do actually puts deep water between themselves and danger, and they will secrete themselves away and hide themselves away in this wetland just fine. And we gave them loads and loads of space so that they had that distance to put between themselves and disturbance. And we wanted to demonstrate peaceful, successful coexistence with this species. And we have so far. They've only been in for 9 months, but they've settled in just great, and the community has really welcomed them. Yeah,
that's fantastic and really, really interesting, because I think, that's the thing about these projects where things come back. You have to consult with people and not just kind of go, oh, we've decided beavers, brilliant choice, let's put them in and see what happens. That's really interesting. And I suppose aside from that kind of, I guess, human challenge, were there practical challenges of kind of finding the space and knowing where you want to put things and how many and what, were there practical challenges at that aspect as well? Yeah,
it was a huge, big project, and I can't take credit for it. It's a collaborative project between Ealing Wildlife Group, Citizen Zoo, Friends of Horsenden, local community group, and Ealing Council. Yeah. And then we had support from Beaver Trust to put forward a feasibility study to Natural England to say that we'd chosen a correct site and it was suitable for them. And we had support from the Mayor of London to get a lot of our baseline ecological recording done. So it was a massive group effort and a huge volunteer effort as well, with our community kind of jumping in and clearing historic litter and getting the place ready for it. So probably it was, 2, if not 3 years in the making, really, before the beavers arrived. And part of that was actually back and forth with Natural England to get the license, because a project like this that is so urban and was going to be publicly accessible, the Capital Ring that runs around London runs through our beaver enclosure. So it was a publicly accessible site in a very urban area with lots of neighbours, not just 1 or 2 farmers around you that you had to get permission or support from. We had to write to, dozens and dozens of local businesses to say, this is what we're doing, and we may need to capture a beaver on your land if one escapes. And so there was loads of hoops to jump through, and sometimes the goalpost moved, but it was a bit of a logistical nightmare at times, quite stressful at times. And we had to design the enclosure to keep beavers in and allow people in and out at the same time. But we got there in the end, as I say, a big group effort, and we finally got the beavers in October last year, a family of 5 from Scotland, and they've settled in, really well.
Nice. And I'm glad the Scottish pride just came out a little
exactly.
bit. Nailed it. Good for Scotland.
We jokingly, to be honest with you, refer to them as Asbo beavers, because they They came from Scotland where farmers didn't want them on their land. Not because they're Scottish, but because beavers, and we're very honest about this is part of the objective of the project, is to say that yes, beavers can be a nuisance species to certain stakeholders. So where they came from in Tayside, they were on prime agricultural land, whereas arable and root crops. And if beavers there are blocking up drainage ditches and causing localised flooding, that's affecting that farmer's profit margin. So beavers put out in the right place is really important, in the right habitat. And actually prime agricultural land with very few trees is probably not the place to be putting beavers. So we were very happy to get them from Scotland. The alternative, unfortunately, of translocation is lethal control. So we are happy to, bring these Asbo beavers to the big smoke for a new life in the city.
It's an exciting move for them. It's a whole new place to explore.
They settled in very well. We had pictures or images of them on our trail cameras for the first couple of weeks, and they're there munching away, not bothered, and there's sirens in the background, and there's fireworks going off on another week, and people were very worried, will they be okay? And it's like, they will be fine. They have lived alongside people for a long, long time. They get used to us, and they've settled in grand.
That's brilliant. And I guess once you've jumped through these hoops and you've tried to get all these businesses to agree and all these things to happen, and you find the beavers and all of that was with the vision of kind of what is the vision of the future, I guess. What is what would you like to see this start to do in the environment that they're in? Yeah.
So for our project, we mainly had kind of 3-4 key objectives. One is we should be bringing this species back because we eliminated it, and we have a moral and legal duty to restore lost species. But the 3 main objectives of this project were study what beavers do on an urban river catchment, specifically around flood mitigation, because the council had already earmarked that area, Paradise Fields, for expensive engineering works. And we said the beavers will do it at a fraction of the cost, more sustainably, and give you green credentials. And luckily, I joked about this yesterday, we have the head of parks is Canadian, so he was like, yeah, okay, that's cool. And we were like, we didn't think we'd get the permission that much. The other objective was to look at the habitat and biodiversity improvements with a view to releasing water voles there later on. And then finally, probably the most important one, was this kind of public engagement and changing hearts and minds and showing other councils in boroughs in London, but other boroughs or councils, nationwide, that beavers are on their way back. Yeah. There's wild beavers living all over the country now, and they're going to be encroaching on towns and cities, and the sky isn't going to fall down. And sometimes there might be a tree felled that you didn't want felled, and here's how you protect that tree very cheaply and easily with wire or with gritty paint. Here's how you manage dams if they're in the wrong place. Here's how you manage beavers in the urban landscape. So it's really a kind of a demonstration project rather than we are repopulating London with beavers. But where we hope it goes is that we're currently in a legal position where you cannot wild release beavers in England. You can in Scotland. But we want to get to a point, and hopefully with this change in government we'll get there quicker than the dragging the feet that's been going on, is that actually when our licence period expires in 3.5 years, we would like to be able to bring some of those young beavers from our enclosure to a new life in the wild in Greater London rather than into another enclosure.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. Really interesting. And I guess you said they've been there 9 months?
About
now?
9 months, yeah.
How are those kind of goals going so far? Is there progress?
They have been so quick in proving the model and proving themselves. Honestly, we had got them in October. We had 2 big storm events within weeks of them coming. Don't know if you remember last autumn, and we almost had one of our culverts wash out. There was so much water and deluge there. So they hadn't had much of a chance to impact that. But by December, they had put in 5 dams into the system. And we had the same kind of big storm event in December, and the storm drain outside in the retail park, whereas previously on those events it was gushing out like a fountain, it was just trickling down the road. So they'd slowed the flow, they'd dissipated the water out across the landscape, they'd created a more complex wetland that was holding back and absorbing more water, and the water table had elevated. So they'd basically turned the site within 3 months into a giant sponge that was absorbing all that rainfall and releasing it really slowly. And we just didn't have an idea that they would do that so quickly. Yeah, so really, really impressive results. And now we're into spring and summer. We've seen the water quality improvements, a 50% reduction in phosphates and nitrates in the system, clearer water, a huge increase in aquatic invertebrates, and then all the other birds and bats coming in and feeding on those. It's been a very rapid change with 5 beavers on site.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that there's examples there that prove the points to everybody. I think you said there was a car park, like a retail park. Is it you
Retail
said?
park next
And
door.
So it's obvious not just to people who maybe were following the project closely.
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
then the kind of demonstrable for the wider community, people who aren't necessarily immediately interested in it are
No.
now going, oh, there's a benefit to these things being here.
Yeah,
There's things
yeah.
that you can show to policymakers. There's things that you can show to different groups. All happening in 3 months is so
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. And it's been remarkable actually spending so much time down there and like listening to people in the retail park. And you overhear people saying like, there's a post box topper that someone knitted from wool of our beaver family to commemorate the launch of the project. And you see people walking by and going, oh yeah, that's because there's beavers over there behind that fence next to the retail park. And, you know, we jokingly say it's probably the only place in Britain where you can buy a Big Mac and see a beaver within 5 minutes of each other, you know. So it's really bringing beavers to the people, you know, and as people are really inspired by it, people who wouldn't necessarily be interested in nature, restoration, conservation, it's kind of piqued their interest and gone, you can walk just through that underpass at the bottom of the McDonald's car park and you're into a rewilding project.
That is so exciting and so interesting. And I think I guess looking forward then from now, you have your goals. Is there anything you kind of are hoping to see within the next year or so that is starting you're starting to work on, or the project's starting to work on? I know you said about outreach and things. What's kind of in your mind now?
We would like to do more, like the educational part of what we do is really important. And at the moment we're putting on with volunteers, myself, our ecologist, Elliot from Citizen Zoo, we're putting on guided tours and walks and things, but we can only do so much. And what we would like to do is get some funding for a person to actually facilitate schools, scouts groups from wider London and start to really ramp up that educational value of the project. But that can't be done at scale on volunteer power alone. We're already quite stretched. So we're looking for funding at the moment. We're applying for various sources of funding to do that. And then the other thing is we're only in year 1. So we did all the baseline recording last year of what's there in terms of flora, fauna, bugs, right up to birds and bats and things. And we're starting to see promising signs on biodiversity improvements as well. But I think the biggest thing that we're looking forward to is that this project and other beaver projects nationwide kind of moves the dial on acceptance, social acceptance, and government acceptance that this is the right thing to do. And if we're going to, you know, actually actively reinstate this lost species, which has a magnified effect on its environment and has ecosystem services for us, you know, of slowing down flooding and mitigating for drought and cleaning our air and capturing carbon, the government has to have a grown-up plan that compensates people who will have losses or incentivizes people for the social good that having beavers on your land can do for people further downstream, you know. So I hope that in the next few years we start to see a more grown-up conversation and a better plan to have this species back outside of fences. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. I think what is nice, and I think has happened with every single one of my guests now, is that I've learned enough, and there's so much exciting things going on that I can go, in a year's time, come back on the show and we can have another chat about this and learn what's happened since. I'm very conscious of the time because I feel like it's flying past us. And I just wondered, before we move on to maybe my quick fire questions, which I've been asking everyone, is there kind of like anything else about the project you wanted to mention, or anything, last things that you're kind of hopeful, anything to say, last minute things about the beavers?
Well, when is this going out? What kind of lead time have we got?
When will I get the file? I'll get the fund within the next couple of months.
Couple of months is good, so I can probably let you in on a little secret. We're pretty sure we're going public on this fairly soon, and I know we're at Birdfair now, but we're pretty sure we have babies this year. So that is proof of concept that if they're happy there, they've had babies. And yeah, I'm 95% sure, but we just need a little clincher piece of footage to prove it.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
but
very exciting.
Mum looks like she's had babies. Let's leave it at that for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I won't ask too many follow-ups. Yes, I feel like an podcast exclusive for Pangolin at Global Birdfair. Very excited.
Yeah.
I
did tell a few people yesterday, but let's go with that.
Well, for me, and for my listeners who may be listening to this recording later, all they need to know is it's exclusive. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. But no, this is the weird time continuum of recording podcasts. Like, when is it going out? Oh, we're fine to say that now.
Yeah, it's fine. It's all good. No, that's so exciting. I think a lovely kind of note to leave on, an example of success, and absolutely brilliant. And I guess now kind of we can move on to some of the questions that I've been asking all of my guests, some quick fire questions that I've kind of been asking everyone just to get a kind of flavour of different pieces of advice and things that they're interested in, just to kind of broaden the conversation and give people a little bit more to think about.
Okay, I'm a bit nervous about this. I don't know what's coming. I know one or two things coming.
Yeah, they're nothing scary.
Okay.
The first question is, well, maybe not an easy one, depending on how much advice you have, but if there's someone out there listening and kind of enjoying the podcast and learning about your work and feeling inspired, what is your top piece of advice for somebody who wants to get involved in the conservation or nature space? What would be your top piece of advice?
Seek out a local group. It doesn't have to be exactly, your niche interest, but some kind of outdoorsy conservation or just nature appreciation or nature connection group, and try and build that village around you of like-minded people. Because I think we all living in this time of, eco-anxiety, and the news agenda, especially in the natural world, is doom and gloom, and it's very, very lonely and difficult sometimes to be taking that on your own. And you've seen it this weekend, connecting with other nature lovers and birders and things like that. Actually having a local community around you of people who share your concerns but can also talk about what positive action you can take is so powerful. And, I'm not from London, but I built Ealing Wildlife Group almost to build that little village that I needed. And it's grown into something completely beyond my imagination back in 2016 when I said, let's go on a couple of bat walks, but I think connecting into that local community of people that share your interests, share your concerns, and will take positive action together is so powerful. And we can only, we can think global, but we can only act local often. And actually acting local and making things happen can be really inspiring and inspire others as well.
Yeah, I think that is a perfect piece of advice. And it's nice because it's come across the multiple guests I've spoken to across the weekend. We've had people working in Portugal and Spain and the UK, and kind of everybody highlights that importance, no matter where in the world you are. If you're listening to this, not at Global Birdfair, in the future, wherever you are, finding that local group is so important. I think that's a brilliant piece of advice. Brilliant. And I'm excited for your answer to the next one, because you built it up while we were doing our little pre-podcast chat. I'm very excited.
Well, I'm very excited with what I just saw, so
yes.
Yeah, happy to share.
So what I ask everybody is, we are an underappreciated species and project and kind of celebration of those things, a show that does all of those kind of things. And so what I ask everyone usually is, what is your favourite underappreciated species? But for you, at Birdfair, I'm saying, what is your favourite underappreciated bird species?
Okay, it is, it's the Dunnock. And I think the Dunnock is definitely overlooked. A lot of people overlook it and don't even realise it's a different bird. They think, oh, there's an LBJ, a little brown job skulking around in the bottom of my hedge. It's a sparrow. It used to be called a hedge sparrow. But actually, it's the only bird of its kind in the country. It's in a centre. And it's beautiful when you look at it up close. You can just see it as a little skulking brown job. But actually, it's like beautiful chestnut and black streaks, and the male has this gorgeous blue-grey and the little orange eye, little pink kind of orangey legs, and it's like kind of jerking around like a little mouse under the hedge. But its song is really nice. Its call, I was just talking about it because we were looking for them, and its call, and my dad described it to me when I was young as a squeaky bike wheel going up the lane, just this. And it's like a really subtle little sound that, again, you overlook and you go, hang on, there's a Dunnock there, listen. And I've tuned people into it and they're like, oh, I would never have heard that. So it's a really overlooked bird. And then the most remarkable thing about it, do you know where I'm going with this?
I'm on the edge of my seat.
It's got like a very racy sex life. So
Okay.
you wouldn't think it in, every suburban garden or whatever, that this Dunnock basically is going around and has paired up with its mate, and she's skulking off into the next door neighbour Dunnock's territory and mating with him too. And then she's coming back to her partner, and he's kind of suspicious that she's doing this, and he inspects her and gets her to lift her tail, pecks at her cloaca, and asks her to eject his competitor's gift, let's say. And this is all going on, and she has basically formed an insurance policy that if her partner dies, the local cat or sparrowhawk gets him, then the other neighbouring Dunnock male will come in and help her feed the young because they could be his too. So it's this unknown parentage strategy. But the clincher is that the judgmental male asking her to lift her tail and tell us what you've just been up to is also doing it with the other female Dunnocks around. So they can each have up to 3 or 4 different partners that they've made it with in a single season while they're being faithful partners over here to this nest. So you just wouldn't know what's happening in suburban gardens, would you?
This is scandalous.
Is this new to you?
People, I didn't know this.
Well, there you go. You'll never look at a Dunnock the same way
I'm
again.
never going to look at anything. No, it's changed everything. And usually when I do this over Zoom or over an online call, the audience don't get to enjoy the horrified looks.
I'm
that
seeing
I
some
sometimes
horrified
make.
looks, and I'm seeing some smiles too. Yeah.
So I know that's
And
like
some parents holding their kids' ears. This is a family show.
well, it's fine. It's the
It's
last
natural
one of
history.
the day.
It's
the last
natural
one of the
history.
weekend. Yes, and
Yeah.
it's important that we learn about
We
all of
have
these
to
things.
talk about all facets of life.
And I think that's a brilliant, like the fact that that's going to be probably the last fact of the Birdfair podcast that I record. That will be the one that sticks with people. So that's the
Good.
most important thing, I think.
I'm glad to have that accolade.
Beavers in this, it's good. It's good.
Yeah, Beavers and racy Dunnocks.
Yes.
But I didn't tell you what I just saw
Oh, and what did you just
for
see?
the first time.
Oh,
I just
no.
saw a baby cuckoo being fed by Dunnock parents or foster parents.
There's a whole other level. There's a TV series in this.
I know.
This
I
is-
know. As a duped Dunnocks. They went to all that promiscuous activity and then they ended up raising someone else's baby for their efforts.
I feel like that.
I know.
People watch,
It's been a day. It's been a day.
Why do people watch rubbish TV and reality shows when it's all happening in their gardens?
Exactly.
Just get a pair of binoculars.
Yeah,
Put up some
start
bird
looking.
feeders, do whatever. Get out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And be horrified. That's
Horrified and delighted.
horrified and just
Yeah.
invested.
But my first baby cuckoo. Delighted.
That's brilliant. Yes. And what a nice, I feel like Birdfair has been a perfect opportunity to do bird watching alongside. So I'm like, this is brilliant. And a lovely, strange, interesting note to end on. The final thing, of course, I will ask is that if anyone wants to keep up to date with the work that the Beaver Project is doing or anything you're up to, where can people go to keep up to date with your work?
Yeah, so my own social media handles on most platforms is that Sean, and it's SEAN. And then we're about to launch the EalingBeaverProject.com website fairly soon. So yeah, keep an eye out for that.
Perfect. And if you're listening to this online, I'll put in the description links to all of that.
Brilliant.
And of course, if you're out there listening, you can find Pangolin, the Conservation Podcast, on all of your streaming sites, on social media, wherever you get podcasts from, wherever you kind of look for photos and videos and all sorts of things. We're at Pangolin Podcast on all of those. And yeah, go subscribe, listen. And all of these, if you're at Birdfair, all of the episodes we recorded will be available to listen to there as well. So final thing to say, thank you so much, Sean, for your time and your amazing and sometimes horrifying, but we'll never stop thinking about them facts. So thank you so much for your time. It's been brilliant.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's been fun.
Perfect. And thank you all for listening. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.